Добрый день.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andrei Vorobyev. Many people in the industry know me as representative of the RU Center, but today I'm gonna put my hat on as an independent expert. I'm gonna chair the panel discussion, which is titled "Expanding the Cyrillic Universe." At the plenary and at follow-up panel discussions, we mentioned time and again that domains are an important element of internet governance. And this is not surprising because there are lots of examples when political decisions were also translated to the domain name system, and the internet industry experts had to face this problem as well. Russia is one of the leaders in developing Cyrillic alphabet domains. In a month, we're going to celebrate the first anniversary of the .rf domain. It was launched in May. It was for the first time discussed back in May 2010 when ICANN CEO came here, and we received a certificate for the .rf domain. It's the first Cyrillic TLD, and it's one of the 4 national alphabet domains. We have successfully launched the Cyrillic Moskva domain, and right now we're working on the .rus domain. In other words, there are 3 domains based on the Cyrillic alphabet. And by the way, yes, exactly, I totally forgot about the DETI domain. It's a small domain, but .deti is the 4th Cyrillic domain within a single country, and this proves that the Cyrillic alphabet penetrates the internet industry. But we're going to focus on Cyrillic domains in general, not just Russian domains. So we will primarily discuss Cyrillic TLDs. I'll try to ask you provocative questions. For instance, what are the negative consequences of such domains, or what is the positive impact? But let me first introduce our panelist Ilya Bozlyankov, Core Association Bulgaria, Mikhail Anisimov, Coordination Center for TLDs, .ru, .rf, .deti. There are lots of domains, Cyrillic domains, and he has to do with the .moskva domain and partially .rus. Dusan Stoichevich, sorry for the mispresentation. Sasha Dmitrovsky, Marnet, Macedonia, Pavel Gusev, Kazan, National Information Center, Kazakhstan. Yuri Kargopalov represents Ukraine and the .ukur domain. Next, Sergei Pavalyshev, hoster.by, that's the Belarusian domain, and Dusan Stoichevich, Serbian National Internet Domain Registry, Serbia. So I guess I'll give the floor in the same order I introduced all the panelists. What are the factors that promote domain development? We talked a lot about the danger of regionalizing the internet, that the internet will split into separate standalone segments. And we heard the same arguments back in 2008 and 2009 when we only developed the fast track program. So everyone thought that it was a Babylon Tower syndrome. Now there are other risks. So either alleviate these dangers or confirm them. Ilya, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Sorry, I will be speaking in English. My Russian is not so good. I can confirm that from my personal experience, fighting for the IDN.bg, we heard the same opinions in Bulgarian community that we are going to split the internet, that this domain will divide with the Bulgarian community, that we don't need it. And later on, with the introduction of .rf, with the introduction of the other IDN CCTLDs and GTLDs, we haven't seen this. the internet continues to function as usual. That's because those domains are only for the regional communities, for Russia, for Bulgaria, or for the Cyrillic communities. Just like the IDN GTLDs for the cities, for example, .Berlin is only for Berlin, but this doesn't divide Berlin. And when we saw this, actually the opponents of the introduction of new domains in Bulgaria were silenced. They didn't say anything. My personal view is that it's not a problem for global and local domains to exist, because the target for .rf or .online or .bg is a local shop or a local company that has customers only from Bulgaria or visitors only from Bulgaria. It's not needed. They don't need a global domain name accessible from everywhere. Recently, the main problem that I see is, I think more people will talk about that, is the IDN email issue. We get number of daily requests why my email is not functioning, why I cannot use my email. So I'm confident that in a couple of years this also will be resolved, but this should be our priority now.
Thank you very much. As far as emails are concerned, we heard about that back in 2010, and actually back then people stated that we're going to solve this problem in 2 years, but 5 years have passed. Mikhail, what about the .rf domain? And trust me, the .rf domain is the leader in the TLDs in the number of registrations. 500,000 registrations, that's the level we have reached. Thank you, Andrei, for the question. Let me take the previous question first, and I'd like to add to what has been said, that when we only launched the .rf domain, it was one of the first Cyrillic TLD domains. Only an Arabic domain and a Chinese domain were tried to be launched. We talked about the fact that the internet will be balkanized and it will split into separate parts. Naturally, all these fears didn't come true, and we do understand that they will never come true because the role of such domains are totally different. This is the part of the internet that allows people to interact with the internet. Localization boils down to DNS systems and other technical issues, but the names of domains in different languages doesn't preclude them from being part of the common space. 5 years have passed, and we've seen lots of researches and considerations to this effect. There are several schools of thought. One of them is that the Cyrillic email, if it worked to the full extent, would promote an active development of the Cyrillic domain, because it would be one more problem that would be solved through registering a Cyrillic domain. And it would also simplify communications, right? Exactly. On the other hand, there are other schools of thought saying that the role of IDN domain is quite narrow. It simplifies the communications, advertising, and so on and so forth. While email can be based on ordinary domains, the IDN email problem is not actually a problem. But I guess when we try, we learn what happens with that. We have to go by trial and error. Mikhail, another question for you. We've been waiting for a 5 million domain in .ru domain to be registered, and actually this is what we expected in late 2014. Since, well, we have registered 4.8 or 4.9 million does that mean that .ru slowed down development of the .rf domain? Well, I don't think so. If you take a look at the dynamics of the .ru domain, you'll see that the number of domain registrations coincided with other events in the market, and therefore it's difficult to establish the right link. Search engines were one of the factors. The Yandex and then Google came up with the initiative to change the weight index of search requests. Therefore, lots of domains turned out to be useless after this initiative. And the time diagram shows that quite clearly. The .ru domain plunged after this initiative, so I guess that was one of the major drivers. In addition to that, try to recall what happened in 2011 when we just launched the .rf domain. It was quite a success, but at the same time, it was obvious that the .ru domain developed at rapid pace back then. In other words, the .rf increased the interest of users in domain registrations, especially if we're talking about private entrepreneurs. So it's not an obstacle. I wouldn't say so. Thank you very much. I can only support your opinion, despite the fact that I'm a facilitator. But Sasha, the next question goes to you. We have 7 representatives of 7 national Cyrillic domains. Actually, in the world, there are 11 countries that use Cyrillic alphabet, which means that potentially we could have 11 national IDN Cyrillic domains. What drives small countries such as Macedonia to establish their own domains? I do understand that .rf was quite a large domain, but in your Macedonian domain, you didn't have that much space. Why did you choose to establish your own national domain?
Firstly, I will go back to your first question. When we launched our IDN domain .mkd, the first question from journalists was, why do we need this domain? Why, in the years of globalization, we are closing our country in our small borders. But we were in a specific situation when ICANN announced that IDNs will take place in the world. It was an immediate decision in the country, in the government, to apply for our Cyrillic domain. Why? Our small country has a specific situation last year's problems with the names, with the neighboring countries, etc. And it was a really big political question for us to apply for a Cyrillic domain and to preserve our identity, to preserve our Cyrillic script, which is only official script in Macedonia, and the Cyrillic is widely used in Macedonia. So at the first time we didn't think about that we will have negative comments that we are closing in our country. So there was no doubt. We applied for IDN.mkd. We had also the not so great experience from neighboring Serbia. They launched their Cyrillic domain a few years before us, and we knew that there's not big numbers of registered domains, so we didn't expect it also in Macedonia to have it in such a big number. Having in mind that the population is used to Latinic script, they are using English languages, and when you say internet, they immediately switch to Latinic script. But as I told you, it was a really political question, and we are now happy that we have it.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much. Pavel, .kz was a brand in the CIS member states because you even had a team .kz, and it's one of the dynamically growing domains in the CIS member states. We came up with the initiative to register the .kz domain. Well, the initiative to register our own Cyrillic domain in Kazakhstan was put forward by the registry itself. When the IDN standards were developed, Kazakhstan, as one of the successful domain registration countries, decided to enable our citizens to use the Cyrillic alphabet to get addresses. As far as the split, I don't think there was any split. Just like in the .rf domain, it didn't increase the demand. We faced certain problems because the .kz domain or .kaz is not supported by any web browser save for the Internet Explorer. Therefore, when users registered their domain names, they actually saw that in reality this domain name didn't work. The Internet Explorer sends you to the right website, but the coding was wrong. So the .kaz domain didn't deploy to the extent we wanted it to deploy. Let's say a resident states that he shifts from the Latin alphabet to the Cyrillic alphabet. And by the way, by 2025, we are tasked with using the Cyrillic alphabet in our scripts. Naturally, it goes without saying that we cannot limit ourselves to the Cyrillic alphabet only. We're going to face the very same problems. I guess we're going to have to launch an IDN2 system based on the Latin language. And this is one of the obstacles. When we need to extend the domain names, we see that there are lots of users in the .kaz domain, which means that users don't see any sense in using a domain that doesn't work. They want to use their native language, but when they encounter specific problems, they see that this is not a well-developed solution. It doesn't work. Yuri, probably Ukraine had the most heated debate when you tried to launch the Cyrillic domain. Part of the community was for launching this domain, and some people said that it was a totally useless idea. You postponed the launch of the IDN registration several times, but what's the current status of the .ukr domain, and what's the relationship with the .ua domain? Thank you very much for giving me the floor. First of all, I'd like to mention that Ukraine was among the first countries that since 2003 has been fighting for IDN domains. And we were strong advocates of the Cyrillic domains. It so happened that Ukraine was the third country to submit its request in Sharm el-Sheikh in 2003, and we became the 23rd country to receive an IDN domain. There is a saying, a Ukrainian saying, saying that if you have two Ukrainians, you're going to have three bosses. Well, at least this is what our president says. Online, 11,788 domains have been registered as of now. The last domain to be registered was the kopets.ukr domain, a good one. The specificity of our domain is that, according to our observations, 23 to 25% are operating websites, and this share is quite significant. You mean websites with unique content, not? No, I'm talking about both websites with unique content and those that use as a hyperlink. We had a borsh.ukr domain in Cyrillic, but at the same time, it sends you to a borshcafe something. And Borsh Cafe is can be spelled in different ways. For instance, the Cyrillic sh could be spelled in lots of ways. For instance, SCH or STCH. As for IDN email, whether it has an impact on the domain development, we believe that it does have an impact, and we do work in this direction. Last year at the panel discussion, I mentioned that we are ready to launch the IDN email tomorrow. The local part is a combination of figures. The most logical thing would be to use the phone number of the end user. As for the domain part, the email address, it's not a problem as far as processing is concerned. The problem is visualization, and this is a problem of the mail agents that work with end users. Another thing we haven't mentioned so far, but which is an obstacle that hinders the process, is that a Cyrillic domain adequately represents the trademarks in Cyrillic. When we launched our domain, we had a special period when we allowed priority registration to trademarks only. Quite a few companies turned to us and they came to our domain. But we use the open registration principle. So if you don't even own a trademark, you can still register a relevant domain. Therefore, copyright protection becomes a priority. To do that, you need a professional, competent authority to settle disputes like that. And we usually settle issues like that out of court. If this element works efficiently and professionally, it will promote and advocate Cyrillic domains or IDN domains, because we should not narrow down and limit ourselves to Cyrillic domains. Have you tried to use the international procedure? More than 70 countries already joined this international process, and the settlement out of court is done by courts of arbitration. Whose rules do they use there? Well, I guess I understand what you mean. They use ICANN rules. No, ICANN rules are not used. They use standards recommended by ICANN. Actually, they use rules translated and interpreted by ICANN, but these are foreign rules. Well, I could agree with this viewpoint. Sergey Povalyshev hoster by .bel and .by domain. How do they coexist? Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Well, you've been discussing obstacles and restrictions, but originally Andrei asked a question about the drivers behind the domain deployment and development. We have the least experience in IDN domains. The Cyrillic .bel domain was launched on the 1st of March 2015. And right now we are progressing through the priority registration stage. If you don't mind, I'd like to share my vision on developing our own IDN domain and our expectations. As of now, the national Belarusian segment is growing at a rapid pace. In the past few years, .by domain has experienced the greatest growth rates. Online business is becoming more popular in Belarus, and in the past few years, we've seen lots of website registrations. You mentioned globalization. Well, the internet per se is about globalization. But most Belarusian companies target the Belarusian market or the market of the customs union, in other words, Belarus, Russia, and Kazakhstan. Well, you can say that all companies want to conquer the world, enter the European market, and so on and so forth. But most our companies are focused on the Belarusian market only, and they sell their products in Belarus or Russia at the most. As far as the IDN domain is concerned, we have two official languages in Belarus, Belarusian and Russian. The .bel domain supports both official languages, and right now we position the .bel domain as an alternative. So here I beg to disagree with Yuri, who believes that the main problem is non-functioning email. But we say, right, the email doesn't work, but you can use Cyrillic in the .bel domain as a successful synonym for the existing website. It doesn't cost much to launch your own Cyrillic domain. It's not an obstacle. And I don't think I should mention why a Cyrillic domain is more convenient in outdoor advertising and in other media. As for other drivers that help us develop our IDN domain, they include the state support. As I have already mentioned, right now we're progressing through the sunrise period. And in the 3 weeks that we allocated for the public authorities to submit their requests, we received more than 1,500 requests. And the cost, there was a fixed price of $15 per registration. In the past few years, we received lots of questions from the public about the .by domain. The .by domain came from the historic name of, from the historic spelling of our country. Belarusia is spelled as B-Y-E and so on and so forth, while in the Cyrillic we don't have the Y. Belarusian speakers were quite upbeat about the launch of the Cyrillic domain because it solves all the problems with the spelling of the name of our country. Thank you very much, Sergey, for a very interesting topic you touched upon. Dushan, I do understand that it's hard to be the last to take the floor, but nevertheless, are there any peculiar features inherent in the Serbian domain, in the Serbian IDN? Are there any additional aspects proving that the Cyrillic domain facilitates the development of the Latin domain?
Good question. For the start, I will try to answer your first question. Let me start with this. I am not native English speaker. So I cannot use English language pretty well, and this is the case for all the participants of this panel. And IDN is something that is used to reach the people who is not native English speakers. This is the main goal of IDN. And I don't want to talk about numbers. There is a Russian example with a large number and everything. We are second Cyrillic domain name in the world, but with small number. And the number depends on political situation, on domestic situation in the country upon usage of these Cyrillic scripts. So we are using equally Latin, so it cannot be a good number in our case. But back to the answer. Overall, when we talk about IDNs, and there is, I don't want to mention numbers, but we are, with IDN, we have success to reach those people who will not be at internet at all if there is no domestic domestic script on IDN. Secondly, I will like to express my opinion on IDN emails. Maybe I was the first or second guy who addressed this problem, who openly speak about IDN email problem. On TLDCon 2-3 years ago, I was talking about this problem in our .serb IDN domain. And let me explain like this. We are all selling domain names to registrants. Imagine we are selling TV sets, large TV set, I don't know how much inches. Imagine the big one, without remote control. Okay, you can watch, you can use, but there is no remote control. This is email problem. This is, you can use, you can have a success like Russia, like everybody else, but this is not a full product. This is not, when we talk about domain name, this is not a full product. It doesn't have this remote control for the user, and this IDN email is service for the user that is common to use, that is coming with domain name. I buy one and I will get email, and you cannot, you have a problem, you have issues. I can put the blame to ICANN. I can put the blame to IETF. Okay, their fault is that we have a product without remote control. But the answer is, should we wait for them to solve our problem, or we will engage into this problem? So I was sticking my nose into this problem of IDN email, and this is not a simple problem, because I will go with some technical facts here. Domain name, or all of our domain names are in Punycode. Punycode is a representation of Unicode. Unicode is the biggest script who inside Unicode is Cyrillic. So we Unicode transfer Cyrillic script into ASCII script, ASCII or Latin script, English version. This is not the full IDN. There is a problem with that, with browsers and everything on that level. Yuri told us about virtualization. This is common for this. But there is another problem. You have RFC from IETF who tells us that we must use Unicode in IDN email. So you have ASCII, IDN domain name, those XN minus minus and so on, and you have RFC only in Unicode, and a bunch of problems came out. So there is no Unicode email. So this is there is a layers in this IDN email problem. So whoever told you about 2 years, no, it will be 5 or more. So basically, this is my opinion on that. And in Serbian, I explained that we have 2 scripts. We use Latin script. In former Yugoslavia, it was equal to use Cyrillic and Latin script. After breaking apart, we use equally Latin and Cyrillic. So I was surprised here in Russia and Moscow to see IKEA, for example, on Cyrillic, or McDonald's on Cyrillic. This is what I'm talking about, differences in domestic market. You push Cyrillic, usage of Cyrillic. For example, in Macedonia, you will have fiscal bill only on Cyrillic. In Serbia, you will get on Latin, mostly. So there is a simple facts about. Yes.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. Well, even 5 years are not enough to solve the IDN mail problem. Let's see what happens. But let me pass on from the technical issues to legal issues. It's common knowledge that the major problem when you launch IDN domains is the powerful legal lobby in ICANN, which dictated the rules to developers so that trademarks are protected, brands are protected, and so on and so forth. And our experience proves time and again that no matter how often we announce that we're going to launch a new domain, that copyrights will be protected in the new TLD, we haven't been able to secure much success. Few trademarks registered during the sunrise period. As an example, on the 1st of December, we launched the sunrise period for the .Moskva domain, and on the 15th of December, we got only the first request. As far as trademarks are concerned, there are precedents, there are national laws, there are international courts of arbitration to solve all that. But geographical names are not considered to be in Russia to be copyrights, and the .rf domain is a good example. I come from Troitsk, which used to be part of the Moscow region, now it's part of Moscow. There are 2 towns of Troitsk, one outside Moscow and another one outside Chelyabinsk. So they fought for getting the Troitsk.rf domain. In the .Moskva domain, this problem was solved because the Troitsk.rf domain has been allocated for the Troitsk, which is based outside Moscow, and this particular town is going to use this domain. What happens in your domains in terms of protecting the copyrights and geographical names? Ilya, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First, from the position of an IDN GTLD for .site and .online, we launched pretty early, and we were mandated by ICANN to use the Trademark Clearinghouse, which is a database of trademarks. Unfortunately, this database is mostly full with Western trademarks, so Latin. At the time we launched, there were like 200 or less trademarks in Cyrillic. So we have designed special launch phases after the mandated by ICANN that allowed people from with a trademark that is not registered in the Trademark Clearinghouse also to get a domain name. We restricted this process for the Cyrillic countries. And actually, in those second period, we got pretty much more domain names than the Trademark Clearinghouse. And still, it's a bit different for geographic names. There is no ICANN mandated policy except to block the names of the countries in the UN languages. At the moment, we decided not to allow any geographic names, and if a request comes, we evaluate this individually. For example, we got a request from the city of St. Petersburg, but then we started discussing with them. At the end, they decided not to get the domain name. They canceled the project. The problem with geographic names we plan to solve in the IDN CCTLD for Bulgaria a bit different. We will just communicate with the government, and they will provide a list of names that we should block and allow for registration from the city or from the region. So for IDN CCTLD it's a bit easier.
Спасибо, Илья. Миша, я хотел бы,
Thank you, Ilya. Mikhail, I'd like you to dwell on the intellectual property court, which has been formed just a short time ago, but nevertheless is quite active. Thank you very much. In hindsight, I'd like to mention that initially the main disputes were settled by different courts, the courts of general jurisdiction, and very often the quality was quite poor. Because people who tried to defend their rights had to disclose much information on their line of activities. After that, it was decided that the intellectual property court of law would deal with issues like that. First and foremost, it specializes in domain name cases, and it has acquired certain experience in that. And we see that the quality has increased because if a judge understands all the technical issues perfectly well, if a judge understands what domain name is all about and all the registration processes and all the other aspects, he or she can rule with a better efficiency. The role of the coordination center was huge in this regard. We tried to shape the court procedures that would have impact on further cases so as to come up with the greatest number of ready-to-use solutions so as not to waste the time of any stakeholders. It took us about 1.5 years to fulfill this job, and now we're enjoying the outcomes of this work. That's probably the most important project we implemented in the .rf and .ru domains as far as legal issues are concerned. Thank you very much. Sasha, the floor is yours.
Because Marnet is public institution in Macedonia, we had an easier task to reserve all geographical names and all names that were relevant to the state. So we prepare information to all governmental and all public institutions, then that we are prepared to launch our IDN domain, and asked from them to send us a list of names which will be reserved for them. So it was somehow sunrise period for a public institution. So finally, when we received all those names, we reserved them, and after that we start with public sale of IDN domains. Regarding trademarks, we have a process of arbitration inside Marnet, so it's a very easy process, and when some trademark is misused, that someone is registering a domain which is a trademark, the trademark owner is sending a request for arbitration in Marnet with proof that is owner of the trademark, and we are resolving those issues and giving back the right of the trademark name to the owner of the trademark.
Ну, похожее на
Well, that's a similar procedure, and I guess all the domain dispute procedures are quite similar, so there is a certain level of standardization. Pavel, the floor is yours. What happens in Kazakhstan in this regard? As far as intellectual rights protection are concerned, we have a certain procedure. If there is a dispute, the parties either settle such disputes out of court or in a civil court. We didn't have many cases like that, maybe because the overall number of registration is only 124,000. But nevertheless, sometimes there are disputes like that, and in most cases, the stakeholders can successfully settle them in the court. We refuse to go to international committees or courts of arbitrations for the same reasons Yuri mentioned. We have our own national law, and we have certain peculiar features that are easier to settle in Kazakhstan as opposed to going to one or other foreign state. What about geographical names? Any disputes about geographical names? Yes, we did a couple of disputes in the .kz domain. It's not an IDN domain, but the procedure was even simpler. All the geographical names, as well as the names of public authorities and the names of high-ranking officials are in a special list of reserved names. And we only register a name for the owner. So that's similar to what we have in the Moscow and Moskva domains. Yuri, you had lots of rules for the top priority lists. You had hundreds and hundreds of thousands names. Then you came up with a short list. How did you solve this problem? Let me recall a case that we had with the Google.ua when the registrar was not entitled to settle this dispute. And despite the verdict, we couldn't solve this problem for 2 years. In a .ua domain in Ukraine, the register could sabotage the verdict of a court of law. That was a long time ago, wasn't it? It was not a normal situation. They tried to find a way out of this deadlock by introducing the UDRP. But as far as I know, in the .ua domain, it still doesn't work. When we launched the .ukr domain, one of the cornerstone issues we discussed was the intellectual property rights protection. There were several layers to do that. The first one is the sunrise period, focusing on 16 categories of owners of intellectual property. Yuri Goncharuk did much within the framework of the Ukrainian law. We discussed it at the Coordination Council. It was a difficult process. We had heated debates, and it's reflected in the minutes of the meetings posted at our website. But finally, we approved and adopted the rules, and we follow them strictly. And the rules read that down to a municipal level, all the geographical names are in a stop list. The right to register a regional domain, let's call them that, is vested with the citizens who live in these territories and the public authorities that represent them. And there were several cases when we refused to register a domain that contained a name of a populated area just because someone wanted to register this domain. At the same time, the very first domain that we registered was the .RIGF. It's a town in the south of Ukraine. As far as the procedure itself is concerned, I'd like to reiterate once again that the mechanism of settling domain disputes is one of the cornerstone issues for shaping the right environment for domain coexistence. In addition to the technical problems such as ID and email, URA, URI, URL, and so on and so forth, disputes are one of the cornerstone issues. To prove that, I can tell you that in the past 6 months, Ukraine has been engaged in a very heated debate about a bill on intellectual property protection on the internet. Two schools of thought clashed in this regard, and Yuri Goncharuk sustained tremendous pressure because people tried to impose on us the viewpoint of copyright owners. That's the European stance to a large extent. But we managed to prove that we needed to strike a balance, that we needed to take into account the interests of all the stakeholders. It's not even a triangle or a square, it's a multifaceted figure. So we had to take into account the interests of all the stakeholders. Right now, this bill is being discussed by the Ministry of Economic Development. That's quite a high level, and it will soon be submitted to the Parliament for consideration. That just to demonstrate the importance of this issue. Indeed, this is so. Sergey, as far as I know, in Belarus, there are fewer categories of intellectual property, but nevertheless, this issue is as important as in Ukraine. Right, so as far as the copyright protection is concerned, for the existing .by domain, the procedure is simple. In most cases, in almost 100% of cases, the trademark owner defends its right for the domain name, and the cyber squatter who registered the domain has to give up the domain, and moreover, he pays all the legal expenses of the copyright owner and the trademark owner. As for the .bel domain, like I said, we are progressing through the sunrise period. A total of 3 months were allocated for the sunrise period. Trademark owners can submit their applications to register one or other domain within this sunrise period. We have established a specific committee that comprises experts from the Intellectual Property National Committee and the Belarus Chamber of Commerce. In other words, these are the professionals that work with trademarks and brands on a daily basis. They consider each and every request on a case-by-case basis. And we decided that if there are two entities that submit a request for the same domain, the priority would be given to the entity that pays for the request sooner. So it's quite simple. As far as the geographical names are concerned, again, we used quite a simple approach. Local authorities, such as executive committees, should get the domain names the same as the names of the populated areas. We gave them a month to do that, and within that period of time, they could submit an application for a domain name. For instance, the Minsk Executive Committee submitted a request for getting the minsk.bel domain, and I guess this request will be fulfilled. As far as Minsk is concerned, I guess there will be certain problems because there is a motorbike going under the same name, or even a refrigerator manufacturer goes under the same name. And I guess it's up to the committee to solve all these problems. Thank you. As compared with the young .bel domain, the .srb domain is quite a mature one, so I guess you have lots of experience acquired on settling disputes like that. Dushan, the floor is yours.
Yes, we are mature, but not too mature. So we have a process for settling disputes in .serb, also in .rs, because we are running both at the same time, so they can be matched. So there was a sunrise period at the beginning of .serb, where trademark owners could apply for domain names, and after that it's free market and process and policies for disputes. So basically this is it for .serb, and in this sunrise period, one interesting topic. You know, you have IDN on the second level domain. I don't think that we have all on the second level. In Serbia, we do not have IDN in second level domain in ASCII domain. So we use ASCII script for .rs and Cyrillic for .serb. And during sunrise period in .serb, we was offering transliteration of existing domain in .rs. So, for example, there was, it's a funny example, cutting hair is shishanje on Serbian. So you have sh and not non-ASCII character. You have ny non-ASCII character, and when you transliterate Sisanye from ASCII, you will get 32 options, and it could be more and more. So we try to cover all the issues about trademark. And when we are talking about the geographical names, we were in talks with our government, because we are not non-governmental organization. We are multi-stakeholder, non-for-profit, like Russian registry. And we were talking with government, and they obtain to us, they send us the list of geographical names that we put from the market. So there is no disputes on that topic.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. Well, we need to give the floor to the audience. But before that, I'd like to ask you a question, and I expect very brief answers from you. Can you give us any examples of extremely successful projects of using Cyrillic or IDN domains to solve the main problem of supporting the national culture and self-identity on the internet? If you have any examples, any successful examples, please share them. Just let's go in the same order. Yeah, the floor is yours.
At the moment, we don't have any such examples in .site and .online, but I believe when finally .bg is launched, we will have something.
Понятно.
Такие примеры есть.
Thank you very much. We do have examples like that. Just yesterday, I saw an advertisement in the Arbat Street. It advertises the .rf website. If you use this hyperlink, you'll see lots of lectures, documentaries, historical photos. It's a huge project run by the Ministry of Culture, which promotes love for history and studying history. I think this is the most successful example. The floor is yours.
We still don't have such example. Mostly of the registered domains are just redirection to existing Latinic domains. So in the moment, we don't have such an example.
Понятно. Павел.
In Kazakhstan, unfortunately, we also don't have any examples like that. But like I said, there are technical reasons for that. We need to recode our databases, and the users don't see their native language in the address line. Yuri? Well, I have several examples to share with you. The artatavare.ukr, in other words, we have the I letter, which is quite a specific letter in the Cyrillic alphabet, and the muzhnachas.ukr, which stands a husband for an hour. I guess you have a huge traffic in that website. The Odessa, the .Odessa domain is also quite popular. This is my hometown, by the way. And according to our estimates, up to 25% of registered domain names are really functioning websites. Well, I don't understand why Pavel says that it doesn't work in Kazakhstan. I guess you're gonna have to solve the universal acceptance problem. I guess you should focus your efforts on that. Well, actually, the .rf domain faced problems like that as well at the very beginning. Web browsers, not all web browsers. Well, persons encoding should be fought. Good visualization of the Cyrillic alphabet is a must. We do have the Cyrillic characters that we should use. Sergey, any examples among the registered trademarks, for instance? Let me explain what I mean to say. In the .bel, we have just a single website with several addresses. Domain.bel and domain.bel. That's quite a successful project. As for other domains, they will start appearing after the 1st of July, after the sunrise period is over, after all the issues are solved. Right now we have just a single domain. All the other will appear in June. And I hope that we'll be ready to share good examples with you by June. Dushan, the floor is yours.
Orthodox Church in Serbia. They started the project 2 years ago, and they are using only .serb Cyrillic one. They don't want to use ASCII domain name. So all of the monasteries and churches and everything will be, it's not right now, but it will be on .serb domain.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for exhaustive answers. Let's open the floor to our audience. I do hope that we have questions, but please use the mic. And please introduce yourself before you ask the question and address the question to one or other panelist. My name is Fedor Smirnov. I represent the .ru register and the .rus domain registry, despite the fact that we haven't launched that domain yet. First of all, I'd like to state my comment, and then I'll ask a question. This session is called the Cyrillic universe, and we don't represent the Cyrillic universe to the full extent. We've been discussing the internet governance and what it stands for quite a long time. I don't know whether it's by chance or not. Naturally, we focus on the national part of the IDN domains, but we do know that generic TLDs also exist, and lots of registrations are in such domains. The .Moskva domain was mentioned in passing. You have to understand that universe doesn't consist of the national part only. There are generic TLDs that use totally different rules. Let's recall what happened with the Crimean generic TLDs. So maybe it's not by chance that we focus on the national part of IDNs only, but that's just a comment. My question is about the .rf domain. Lots of positive things have been said about this domain. Some people said that it's probably the best IDN domain in the world. Maybe it was true back in 2010 and 2011. There are proof links to confirm such statements, but what is happening now? I've been tracking this problem for quite a long time, and I see that the .rf domain, in terms of its development, is lagging behind. You said that there were a total of 800,000 registrations, but we do recall when there was 1 million registrations per year, then it dropped down to 800,000, then increased up to 1 million again. So right now, the growth rates are very slow. And my question goes to Mikhail primarily. What does the .rf domain register do? And I'm not going to address this question to all the other panelists, because it's quite logical to conclude that if you register 800,000 domain names, you have the right financial resources for the infrastructure. If you have just 10,000 registrations or 5,000 registrations, it would be quite naive to expect you to have the right resources. I'm quite familiar with the IDN domain development history. And we've been discussing time and again the IDN email problem. And we've been discussing this problem for 5 years. What's your question anyway? My question is as follows. There are no technical problems in this regard. Probably there is no will to solve this problem. Is that so? What are the plans? Thanks for the question. I got it. Well, I've been tracking the .rf domain too, and the number of registrations increased and decreased, but now we reached the plateau, which is higher than 800,000 registered domains. And the growth rates are quite stable and sustainable. I wouldn't say that it's just an unregulated process. A domain is registered for a year. After a year, they have to extend their registration. And if they extend the registration, that means that the domains are needed. And I guess the credit should go to all the participants in the process, not just the registrar, but also the registries. And we're grateful to them for that. As far as the IDN email problem is concerned, to say that there is a versatile technical solution that can be rolled out is quite arguable. There are several solutions, and the Google official blog stated that they are ready to launch a full-scale IDN mail service, and China also mentioned that, and Phileas also mentioned that. Unfortunately, our attempts to cooperate with the latter did not result in anything because their technical solution was not realistic for many reasons. So indeed, we do plan to solve this problem, and we do try to do our utmost to solve this problem. We are constantly engaging in various consultations, but we don't see an adequate solution that can be rolled out immediately. As soon as we see it, we'll be happy to deploy it. Dushan, the floor is yours.
Want to interfere in your domestic or political problems. I don't want to answer to this question. I would like to tell you about IDN problem for 5 years, as you told us. Act now. For me, I would like to ask you all who are willing to participate. There is a universal acceptance steering group with ICANN. This is one place where you can not only talking about IDN email problem, you can try to solve it in this group. There are other places, but this is the one that was formed 2 or 3 months ago, and if we are, I know that ICANN is somehow in gray zone in our minds, but this is the only place that I could find that will solve this problem. So I want to call you all to participate there.
Ну и традиционно есть.
And Yuri also wants to add a few words to that. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. Try to recall what Arkady Rakin said. He posed 2 issues. What does your lab do? That was the first question. And the second question is, the problem seemed to be complicated on the face of it. After we started working on it, it became totally impossible to solve. We did hope that the IDN mail would not be a problem, but it turned out not to be so. It turned out that the domain port processing rules and the local port processing rules are different. Part of the infrastructure is ready to process the domain part, but we face huge problems as far as the local part is concerned. At the 92nd summit of the IETF held in Dallas, they actually set up a working group. First of all, that means that they recognized it as a problem, as Dushan mentioned. We thought that the Punycode would solve this problem, but actually we have to use the Unicode. But Unicode has its own interesting features, at least the current version of the Unicode, that don't allow this problem to be solved. So in Dallas, we discussed the new version of Unicode 32. Moreover, in Dallas, they issued the new version of RFC, authored by two US experts, and they stated these problems, which are not linked just to the IDN mail. These problems are also linked with the URI and URL. So like I said, this problem is almost next to impossible to solve, but we're working on it. The universal acceptance states part of the problem. ICANN has realized that it needs to solve this problem. Moreover, ICANN has generated a couple of generation panels that discuss Cyrillic, Arabian, and other language domains. We're on a threshold of a totally new internet. Now I'm going to share my personal point of view, but no one knows what this internet would be like. But it's going to be a new version of the internet. I can guarantee that. Anything else to add? If this is not the case, then we'll give the floor to the next speaker. My name is Mikhail, Единый стандарт. Mikhail, in his opening remarks, used the following definition: Balkanization of the internet. We have two representatives from the Balkan countries. Dushan and Sasha, used to live in the same country. They were born in Yugoslavia. Why did you lose your domain? That's the first question. And the second question is, why don't you restore your domain? You used to have your domain in Latin or in English. Don't use the English speaking domain. The right name would be Latin domain. So why don't you restore your domain in Cyrillic so that the public and the world sees that Balkanization is not bad. Balkanization is a way to solve common problems. So that to restore communications for 8 Balkan countries so that they live in the same space. The .su domain has been preserved, and the credit should go to the internet community.
First of all, Ilya is from Balkan also. This is the first one. Second one is when you're talking about Balkanization of internet, you are talking only to me, not to Ilya and Sasha, because we took all the blame for former Yugoslavia and everything that goes with Balkanization. Third one, you are talking about .u, .ypsilon-u, like Soviet Union, .su. .u was closed when we opened .rs, and everybody wanted to close this because there is no country with .u. So everybody from the Balkans wanted that, and it's not a mistake for me. Okay, now when we can reopen for marketing purpose or something like that, but there is no domain names in there, and there is no true meaning of collaboration in this name Yugoslavia anymore for the Balkan people. So allow me to disagree. There is no communication on that domain, and this is not a political question. Balkanization of the internet was used by one French guy in one blog, and allow me to disagree with him. I don't see any Balkanization of the internet, and I don't see this thing, Balkanization, as I don't know, specific topic that you can transfer to internet that is happening, and so on. So this is my answer.
Пожалуйста, Сашо.
Sasho, the floor is yours. What does Macedonia think about that?
So we are same opinion. So we have Balkanization, but because we are still strongly connected, we have cooperation on even daily basis. So maybe if you call it Balkanization, yes, it still exists. We are strongly cooperate each other, but restoring something which is so far from us, and I don't see any reason for that.
Илья, есть что добавить?
Ilya, anything to add to that?
Well, Bulgaria is always a bit outside of the process, so we just monitor. We have nothing to add.
Sorry, I will add something. You will be surprised at the level of communication between our registries and even with Ilya and all those people who are just monitoring this Balkanization. So we are very much in touch. We have agreements. We are talking. We are trying to collaborate on every issue together. So there is no point in .u.
Пожалуйста, Юра, чуть-чуть, пожалуйста, короткий комментарий.
Yuri, please be brief. Well, the very definition of Balkanization has nothing to do with the Balkan states. I mean, the Balkanization of the internet, because the definition was used in the article devoted to the democracy on the internet. And people were scared about the fact that IDN will split the internet, and one of the esteemed internet experts used this term, the Balkanization of the internet, for the need of a better word. So you shouldn't be afraid of Balkanization, because Balkanization actually stands for integration. As for this European expert who used this term in the first place, I don't know what he actually meant. Thank you very much. We still have time for one more question. Thank you very much. My name is Dmitry Rybas. I'm from the Department of Information Technologies of the city of Moscow. And I have a question about the legal frameworks. You've discussed all the disputes, settlement mechanisms for trademarks, and so on and so forth. My question goes to all the panelists. Does your national law contain a definition for the domain law? And do you think that you should define domain names? And do you think that domain registration should be regulated by law? Since our forum is called Internet Governance Forum, do you think that licenses should be issued on registering domain names? And my second question is, how do you end users learn that there are Cyrillic domains? Well, I'm being an end user, I use one of the search engines, either Google or Yandex. I type in my request, and I don't care whether the hyperlink is in Cyrillic or in Latin. Right, so let's take his questions, but very briefly. Ilya.
Very briefly, regarding the legal framework in Bulgaria, there is no and not a single law that is connected to domain names. And actually, the term domain name is mentioned only in the communication law that specifically says that domain names are not regulated. Currently, we have a debate with the government, working groups, with people, if the government should intervene more. At the moment, the result of the discussion is that they don't have the capacity to administrate, for example, a CCTLD. So they decided to leave the .bg to the public, to whoever applies.
Ну и, соответственно,
My opinion is that some very little regulation should be there in order to prevent the CCTLD going out of the community policies. Something that, like in UK, that the CCTLD sign a contract with the government that they agree to be redelegated if they act against the community. Something like that.
спасибо. Миш, давай
Mikhail, let me take the first question. In 2002, we mentioned the domains in the Russian law for the first time. Please take the second question. Let me add a few words to the first answer first. We follow the coordination center rules as far as the domain name registration is concerned, and I personally believe that this is the best way because such rules are more flexible. They can be easily adapted to the rapidly changing environment at fewer losses. As for the second part of the question, a great number of Cyrillic domain names are used in outdoor advertisements, and they are more popular in the regions as opposed to Moscow. In Moscow, you will not see that many Cyrillic domains. If you come out of a train at the railway station in Nizhny Novgorod, you'll see lots of domains in Cyrillic because many stores, many retailers use Cyrillic domains to advertise their services. This is a purely marketing issue. A domain is a human part of interaction and interface. And if you see an attractive name that catches your eye, that attracts your attention, that primarily you will try to type it into the search engine. So this is a purely marketing issue. It's not about regular things. And people who capitalize on all the advantages of Cyrillic domain names increase their traffic. Sasha, the floor is yours.
So I will start with the second question. Marnet, together with the Ministry of Information Society and Ministry of Culture, we launch of the Cyrillic domain was a joint project. So they are really engaged in the process of marketing of the domain of a new Cyrillic domain. So it's really covered by all institutions. And for the legal questions, so we recently started a working group which includes a lot of lawyers, technical people with technical background, and we initiate starting some process of talking, and we will see what will become.
Спасибо, Павел. Пожалуйста.
Thank you very much, Pavel. The domain name definition is included in the executive orders and the law on information. In addition to that, we have rules approved by the Minister of Communications on distribution of the namespace in Kazakhstan. It gives you the procedures and mechanisms for registering domain names. And I personally believe that no additional laws are necessary. The register initially followed its own rules that it developed jointly with the internet community. And the current law was also based on the rules on the register. In other words, all the main provisions were just copied and pasted. And like I said, I personally believe no additional laws are needed as far as domain name registration is concerned. As far as the user is concerned, well, Pavel already mentioned all these problems. Yuri, the floor is yours. Well, the Ukrainian law on telecommunications lists a definition of domain. It even states a concept of TLDs. The rules are considered to be legally binding. As far as the .ukr domain is concerned, the rules have been adopted by consensus through the steering committee mechanism. And they even include such a definition as domain delegation. But it's not a standalone issue. We should discuss this issue jointly with the intellectual property protection. We need to establish the right legal framework. The next element is the administrator. The third element is the registry. It's a very complicated issue. Our courts of law, I mean the Ukrainian courts of law, are unwilling to consider cases like that. It might take them 2 to 2.5 years to return a verdict. And naturally, the existing law does not cover all of these issues. And that's why I said that jointly with the Intellectual Property Protection Service, we raised this issue. And the bill we have submitted to the government for consideration is a balanced one, not just for the trademark owners, but for people on the other side of the barricades as well. Actually, we managed to remove the barricades. Yuri, and how do end users learn about the Cyrillic domain? Well, you say that you can Google something and you get a hyperlink to the Cyrillic domain. Let's say you walk in the street and you see an advertisement. It's much easier for a Cyrillic-speaking person to memorize a Cyrillic name. Let's try to imagine that you remembered the name, but you don't recall the address of the website. You type in the name in the search engine, and you get 20 to 40 to 50 similar proposals and hyperlinks. That's good for you as the end user. But what about the companies that advertise their services? They spend their money on advertising their products and services. You failed to remember the name. You Googled it, and you get hyperlinks to 15 competitors of this company. But if you memorized just the name, for instance, parquet.rf, you wouldn't even Google it. You would just type in the address line parquet.rf or автомобили.rf, just like muzhnachas.ukr or gunsel.ukr. And you wouldn't see hyperlinks to your competitors. And And when I asked the owner why did he register the gunsel.ukr name, he said that this is the exact name of the company. And he said that I want end customers to go to my website, not to the website of my competitor. So basically what I'm driving at is that development of our Cyrillic ID and domains will much depend on the perception of the registrars. Sergey, what's your experience both with regard to the legal framework and the development? In Belarus, we have a regulator in communications, that's our National Information Center, subordinate to the Belarusian president, and this regulator supervises all issues pertaining to the internet. The national segment naturally is regulated by this regulator. The analytical center approved the rules on domain name registration in the national segment of the internet. And the same regulator issues certificates for registries and sets the rules in the national domain. Naturally, it does that in close consultations with us, with the registrars, and so on and so forth. Dushan, the floor is yours.
After Yuri, I cannot talk about search engine optimization because he explained everything. So this is my answer to the second question. And marketing also from Mikhail. But for the first question, I will be long enough. I was a member of a working group, a governmental working group for negotiation with European Union on Chapter 10, telecommunication, informational society, and I think media. We are covering, I was covering domain topic, and surprisingly, we do not have any law upon domain names, and surprisingly, European Union, they even they don't have this law. So this is a common thing in Europe and in Serbia, and I think in most of the countries here. So there is no need for any law from my point of view. And one interesting fact, this negotiation with European Union, they took 6 or 7 years to negotiate to become a member of European Union. And from this chapter that I was in working group still exists. I am not a member because of the statement from European Union that domain part is clear and the best in the world. So for my point of view, there is no need for me to further engage in this project.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the panelists for their answers, and I'd like to thank the audience for their questions. The Russian Internet Governance Forum is a great venue. We meet face-to-face once a year in Moscow, but that's just part of the issue. We give each other our contact information, and we continue discussing issues offline. And by the way, the agenda of our forum has an impact on the agenda of other international organizations. For instance, in Yerevan this September, there will be a Congress devoted to the internet governance, and its agenda will be impacted by our agenda. Once again, thank you very much, and you can exchange your business cards outside this room.